The lights above Cell 9 flickered. It was the farthest cage in the underground lab. The others were empty or held small creatures in stasis, but Cell 9 was always sealed. The glass was tinted black. No one saw inside, and no one wanted to. They said the girl inside was cursed, a vampire alien from the Forgotten Worlds, blood drinker, shadow walker, dangerous. The guards never went near her. Even the scientists kept their distance. Only one camera watched her, and even that was cracked. Most days, Cell 9 was silent. But today, it whispered. Ethan was a maintenance worker, just a human. He fixed pipes, replaced wires, and made sure nothing exploded in the walls. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a scientist. He just liked quiet jobs. That's why he worked alone in the lower levels. He was fixing a leaking valve when he heard it. A soft voice. It wasn't from his comm, not from the speakers. It came from Cell 9. He turned his head slowly. Again, faint and broken, came the word, "Please." Ethan stood still. Had he imagined it? He walked closer. The glass of Cell 9 was almost black, but something, just barely, moved inside. Another whisper followed. "Don't go." He froze. Everyone said the vampire girl didn't speak, that she didn't move, that she had no soul. But this voice, it didn't sound dangerous. It sounded tired, weak, lonely. Later that day, Ethan sat in the break room upstairs, still thinking about that whisper. He told no one. He knew what they'd say. "Don't get close. That thing isn't alive. She'd bite your throat if she could." But the voice haunted him. He returned to the lower level with an excuse. The lights needed checking. His ID cleared. The gate. No one questioned a maintenance worker. He walked quietly toward Cell 9. This time he spoke. "Hello?" he said gently, standing a few feet away from the glass. No reply. He stepped closer. Still nothing. He placed his hand on the glass. It was ice cold. Then, movement. A faint shape inside shifted. Something pale with long dark hair moved closer to the glass. Two glowing red eyes opened slowly. He took a step back, heart racing. She looked at him through the glass, not like prey, not like a monster. She looked afraid. He returned the next day, and the next. Each time he brought small things: a clean towel, a warm drink in a sealed bottle, a soft light he clipped outside the cage so she could see something, gentle for once. She didn't speak again for days, until one evening. When he was about to leave, she whispered through the glass, "Why do you come?" Ethan paused, then said softly, "Because I think you're alone." Silence. Then, "I was alone before the cage." He sat on the floor across from her cell. "What's your name?" "Velari," she answered. He smiled. "I'm Ethan." She leaned closer to the glass. "You're not afraid?" "A little," he admitted. "Good," she said. "Fear keeps you alive." But there was no threat in her voice, only warning, like someone who had learned the hard way. By the end of the week, Ethan knew a little more. Velari wasn't a killer. She had been taken from her moon during a research mission. Her kind survived on blood, yes, but they hunted animals, not people. The military had called her a threat, but she had never harmed anyone. She had spent 3 years in that cage. No sunlight, no stars, no voice speaking to her, until now. She told Ethan about the dreams she had, floating through space, watching, her home from above. She missed the trees with silver leaves, the rivers that ran black under twin moons. Ethan listened. He didn't run. And one night she said something that shook him. "If I drank your blood," she whispered, "I could break the walls." He looked at her surprised. "But I won't," she added, Because you're the only one who talks to me. Then she stepped back. And for the first time, Ethan saw her clearly. She wasn't a monster. She was a girl with hollow cheeks, sharp eyes, and chains around her wrists. Not because she was dangerous, but because no one ever dared to know her. Until now. The hallway to cell 9 was colder than usual. Ethan carried a small thermal box in one hand and a folded towel in the other. Inside, the box was warm soup. He had made it himself. Simple, soft, with no meat. He didn't know if Valari could eat food like humans, but he wanted to offer something other than silence and fear. When he reached her cage, the black glass panel shifted slightly. She was already standing, waiting. He placed the soup container near the bottom slot. "It's warm," he said. "I thought you might like it." Valari tilted her head. "Why?" she asked. Ethan shrugged. "Because you looked hungry." "I'm always hungry," she replied. Then her red eyes fixed on his neck. "But you never bring that kind of food." Ethan didn't step back. "Would you take it if I offered?" Valari's gaze softened. "No. That's why I haven't asked." The next day he returned again, and the next. Each time he brought something small, books with pictures, puzzle cubes, a tiny music device that played ocean sounds. Valari never asked for these things, but she always accepted them. Sometimes, she sat near the glass while Ethan worked nearby. She didn't talk much, but she listened. One day she asked, "Why aren't you afraid of me?" Ethan looked up. "Because you're not what they say." Valari leaned closer to the glass. "You've never seen me feed." He nodded. "I've seen what being alone has done to you, that's enough." She went quiet, then whispered, "You're strange, human." He smiled. "I get that a lot." Rumors began spreading in the upper labs. Someone had noticed strange logins near cell 9. Guards saw items missing from inventory, blankets, energy bars, reading lights. One technician whispered, "Someone's feeding the vampire." Another muttered, "It'll get them killed." Still, Ethan didn't stop. He cleaned the area around her cage, replaced broken wires, fixed a cracked corner on her tray system. No one else would go near her cell anyway, so no one questioned why he was always down there. Valari noticed. "You risk too much," she said one night. Ethan sat beside the glass wall and shrugged. "I don't care what they say." "You should." He raised an eyebrow. "Why?" She stood slowly and pressed her palm to the glass. Her skin was pale like moonlight, her fingers long and elegant. "They fear me because I was born different," she said. "And they will fear you because you saw something else." A week later, guards came during the night shift. Ethan was in the middle of adjusting a fuse box near cell 9 when the lights above flickered red. Armed boots echoed through the hallway. "Step away from the cell," one shouted. Valari rose. Inside the cage, her eyes glowing brighter. "She's not dangerous," Ethan tried to explain, but the guards grabbed his arms. "Orders from above," the leader growled. "No contact with Subject 9. They dragged Ethan toward the elevator, and then a loud clang echoed behind them. They turned. Valari was pressed against the glass, her fangs visible for the first time. Her voice thundered inside the corridor. "Touch him again, and you'll bleed before you scream." The guards froze. She didn't attack. She couldn't. But her power shook the room, and somehow it wasn't rage, it was protection. For him, after the incident, Ethan was given a warning. Officially, he wasn't fired, but he was banned from unauthorized access to dangerous specimens. He was sent to work on upper levels, but he didn't forget her. And Valari didn't forget him either. She refused to eat for 2 days. She turned her back to the glass. She waited. Until one night, the shadows shifted at the edge of her cage, and Ethan appeared again. He had found an old service tunnel, unused, forgotten. When she saw him, her eyes softened. "You came back," she whispered. He pressed his forehead to the glass. "Of course I did." This time he brought no gifts, only his hand resting gently against the wall. Valari placed hers on the other side. "There are people," she said, who only see monsters. And people, he said, who only need a friend. She smiled, faintly, then whispered, "Would you help me if I tried to leave?" He hesitated, not because he was afraid of her, but because he knew if he helped her escape, everything would change. "Yes," he said finally. "If you trust me." Velari looked at him with glowing eyes. "I already do." The service tunnel was old and quiet. Pipes ran along the ceiling. Dust hung in the air like a slow-moving fog. The only light came from a tiny tool lamp Ethan carried in his pocket. He crouched low, checking each metal grate, marking paths on a folded paper map. Above him, the research facility buzzed like a hive. But down here was silence and opportunity. He was building a way out. For Velari, Ethan hadn't seen her in 2 days, not since their last whispered conversation through the glass. But that didn't stop him. Every night, after his shift, he returned to the tunnel. He tested doors, checked which vents were sealed. He moved quietly, patiently. She had asked him, "Would you help me if I tried to leave?" He'd said yes. Now he had to prove it. On the 3rd night, he returned to cell 9 through the tunnel door behind the wall. It led to a hidden maintenance panel no one used anymore. He knocked 3 times, then paused, knocked once more, a signal they'd agreed on. Inside, the black glass shifted. Velari was already awake. She stepped into the faint light. Her eyes glowed, like burning stars, sharp and deep yet full of emotion. "I didn't think you'd come," she whispered. "I'm not like the others," he replied. She moved closer, her face only inches from the glass. "You're not afraid I'll hurt you?" "I think you'd hurt yourself before hurting me," Ethan said quietly. She smiled, not with fangs, but softly. "Then I must be worse than I thought." That night, Ethan passed her a thin piece of paper under the tray slot. It showed a simple drawing: hallways, door codes, exits. She studied it carefully. "You've done this before?" she asked. "No," he said, "but I'm learning fast." Velari touched the glass. "There's something you don't know." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Go on." She looked around the room, then leaned close to the glass and said in a low voice, "I can walk through shadows." Ethan blinked. "What?" "Once a month under a full moon or full planetary light, I can become part of darkness. My kind, we melt into it. But it only lasts for minutes, and it burns a lot of energy." Ethan stared, amazed. "That's how you escaped during the early tests, isn't it?" She nodded. "They never figured it out, thought it was teleportation. It's not. It's slipping between places light can't reach." He sat back against the wall. "Then we timed the escape during the next full light cycle. 5 nights from now," she said. "Then we prepare." The next days were tense. Ethan kept his head down. He acted normal, quiet, average. But every night he returned to the tunnel, expanding the route. Velari waited inside her cage like always, but now she no longer sat curled in corners. She stood tall, alert, ready. One evening, Ethan arrived to find something strange. A folded piece of cloth waited near the tray slot. It was black, stitched by hand. He picked it up. A cloak. She had made it. From scraps he'd given her, old cloth, wire, bits of fabric. "I can't walk in sunlight," she said softly. "So I made this. It may help." He smiled, running a hand along the edge. "You're more prepared than I am." Velari stepped forward, then placed her hand against the glass. "Ethan," she whispered, "if I disappeared during the run, if I can't find you afterward," he shook his head. "Don't say that. I have to. I need to." She closed her eyes. "Promise me. You'll keep going. Even if I vanish into the dark." He leaned forward and placed his hand opposite hers. "I won't go without you." Silence, then slowly her red eyes opened again. "You're not like them," she whispered. "You see me, not my teeth, not my blood." "You see me," he replied. "Not just my body, not my race, just me." They sat like that, silent, hand to hand, glass between them, a vampire alien, a human mechanic, two outcasts, planning a future. No one believed they deserved. But they had already decided. This wasn't about escape anymore. It was about reclaiming their names, their choices, their lives. Together. The hallway lights dimmed to red. Security was switching to night mode. Most of the staff had gone. The upper floors were quiet. Only a few guards remained on rotation, tired, half-focused, walking their paths like sleepwalkers. It was the perfect night. The last night inside the cage. Ethan stood alone in the maintenance room, staring at the old wall panel that led to the service tunnel. His hands trembled slightly. In his pocket, he carried the last part of the escape plan, a stolen clearance chip. One mistake tonight, and they'd both disappear forever. He took a deep breath, then whispered, "You're ready, right?" Behind the wall, in the dark glass cage. Valari opened her eyes. They glowed bright red under the dim light. Her hands were steady. Her cloak was wrapped around her like a second skin, the same one she had made with her own hands. Tonight she wasn't a prisoner. She was a shadow. The escape started at exactly 02 Rao. Ethan cut power to the internal cameras for 42 seconds, just enough to slip through the door without alerting the system. He pulled open the maintenance panel and stepped into the tunnel. He knocked 3 times, then once more. The signal. Valari was already waiting. She had dissolved through the shadows inside her cell, using the full moon energy cycle above the planet. The air smelled faintly of static, proof that she had passed through space no one else could touch. Her breathing was heavy. The act took effort. "Are you okay?" Ethan whispered. She nodded. "It's begun." They moved fast through the service tunnel. Valari stayed close, her body barely making a sound. Her eyes watched every corner, every flicker. Ethan led her with his tool light, using hidden access doors he had mapped over days. Every few meters, she paused to listen, to sense. More than once, she froze suddenly. "Wait," she whispered. And each time, a guard passed just moments later. She wasn't just fast, she was aware. Her instincts had kept her alive for years. Now they kept both of them alive. After 20 minutes of silent running, they reached the final hallway, the one that led to the North Hangar. A single door stood between them and freedom, but it had a voice lock. Ethan had planned this. He took out a small recorder, something he had picked from the security booth. Earlier that week, he had secretly recorded the supervisor's clearance phrase. He held the device near the scanner. "Access override, Supervisor Kren, level 4. The door blinked. Green, it opened. Ethan turned to Valari. "Go." She stepped forward, then stumbled. He caught her. "You're tired?" She shook her head. "I'm fine. Just low energy." He reached into his jacket pocket and took out a vial, his own blood. He had prepared it just in case. He held it out. She stared at it, eyes wide. "You saved this?" He nodded. "You told me you'd need strength to escape." Valari took the vial slowly. Her hands shook. Then she drank, not fast, not wild, controlled, careful, respectful. When she finished, her body straightened, her breath steadied, she looked stronger. Then her voice came softer than ever. "You gave me strength, when I thought I didn't deserve it." Ethan smiled. "You were never weak." They moved through the hangar quietly, but not quietly enough. Security drone blinked awake. An alarm screamed into the night. They had been seen. "Run!" Ethan shouted. Valari grabbed his hand and pulled him through the exit door. Lights exploded above them. Sirens echoed down the corridor. Behind them, footsteps, shouting. A flash of red light flew past Ethan's head, a warning shot. They turned a corner, reached the loading platform. A small hovercraft sat nearby, powered, down unattended. "Can you fly it?" Valari asked. Ethan ran to the side panel. "Yes, if you cover me." She nodded and turned. From the shadows behind them, 2 guards rushed in. She moved faster than thought, leaping, twisting, striking with blinding speed. She didn't kill, but they didn't rise again either. Ethan started the hovercraft. "Valari, get in!" She jumped into the seat beside him. As the hovercraft rose into the night air, more guards burst through the platform door. But it was too late. The craft vanished into the dark sky. They flew for over an hour, no lights, no signals, only stars. Valari sat quietly, her hand resting on Ethan's. She didn't speak, but her silence said everything. She was free, and she wasn't alone. The hovercraft cut through the night like a whisper. It had no name, no ID, and no weapons, just 2 fugitives and a dream of freedom. Ethan kept the lights off as he steered through the thick clouds above the wildlands. Below them, the planet's surface stretched like a broken map. Forests, empty research zones, ruined towers lost to time. Beside him sat Valari, wrapped in her black cloak. Her red eyes flicked from side to side, scanning every shadow. She could feel it. They were being followed. Ethan checked the scanner again. Still no signal. That's a good thing, right? Valari didn't answer immediately. Then she said quietly, "They won't use normal tracking. Not for me. Not now." "What will they use?" She turned her head slowly. "Light." He blinked. "Light? They'll scan for life through high-energy beams, burn through clouds, burn through trees. My people are sensitive to direct light. It exposes us, weakens us." Ethan glanced at her. She was leaning forward, her breathing slow but strained. "You're hurting already, aren't you?" Valari nodded. "It's getting brighter. Day is coming." They landed the craft near the base of a canyon wall where wild vines grew thick over rock and metal ruins. Ethan shut down the engine completely, using thick cloth to cover the glowing core. He helped Valari down. She was walking, but slower now. "Here," he said, leading her into the ruins. "This place used to be a transport post. No one comes here anymore." Inside the cracked stone building, the air was cool and still. Valari found a dark corner and leaned against the wall. Her cloak dropped around her like flowing ink. Ethan sat beside her. Neither spoke for several minutes. Then he whispered, "Why didn't you tell me it would hurt this much?" She stared at the shadows in front of her. "Because I didn't want you to see me like this." "Like what?" "Fragile." Ethan turned toward her. "You're the strongest person I've ever met." She laughed, just once. It was soft and dry. Then she said, "Even strength has a limit under the wrong light." Midday approached. Beams of sunlight broke through the cracks in the ceiling. Valari winced, turning her face away. Ethan quickly grabbed an old tarp from a nearby crate and hung it across the gaps. The space dimmed again. She relaxed slightly. He sat down again and watched her. "Back in the lab," he said quietly. "I heard them talk. They didn't just want to study you. They wanted to copy you. Your blood, your speed, your mind." She didn't reply. He continued. "They didn't see a person, just power." Valari's voice was colder now. "I was born with something they didn't understand. So they tried to lock it, control it." Ethan leaned forward. "They failed." She turned to him slowly. "They'll come again. You know that, right?" "I do. And you're still here?" He nodded. "I'm not leaving." She looked down, then whispered, "Then I have to give you something." She unwrapped a small pouch from inside her cloak. Inside was a silver vial. The liquid inside shimmered, dark red with gold streaks. Ethan frowned. "What's that?" "My blood," she said. "Concentrated. It can heal wounds. Or give someone like you temporary strength. Vision in the dark. But it has risks. It can change things inside you. Ethan stared at it. I don't want to change, he said softly. Villari nodded. That's why I never gave it to you before. Then, why now? She held it out with both hands. Because you might not have a choice tomorrow. That night, after the sun had fallen and the sky returned to quiet black, they walked outside the ruins. The stars shone above. Villari tilted her head up and closed her eyes. The moonlight touched her skin. But this time, it didn't burn. Ethan stood beside her. Are you feeling better? A little, then she turned to him. Ethan, he looked at her. If they come tomorrow and I can't fight back, will you run? He shook his head. No. She stepped closer. Even if they call me a monster? They already did, he said. And I still stayed. She smiled. Not with fangs, with relief. Then she said something he never expected. Then I give you permission to stay with me, even in the dark. He reached for her hand and held it. They were hunted. They were alone. But tonight, in the quiet ruin, hand in hand under the stars, they weren't running. They were becoming something new. The silence before dawn was thin and sharp. Villari stood just outside the ruined station, her black cloak wrapped tightly around her. She stared into the dark forest below, her red eyes watching every branch, every flicker of wind. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones. In the stillness of the trees, in the pressure in her chest, they were close, too close. Inside the building, Ethan checked their supplies. A water bottle, a pulse tool, one stolen energy cell, and the small silver vial she had given him the night before. Her blood. He held it in his hand, still unsure, still afraid. He didn't want to change, but he knew. This escape was coming to an end. The first blast hit the hill. It wasn't loud, but deep. The ground shook under Ethan's feet. Dust fell from the ceiling. Villari ran back inside, her eyes sharp. They found us, she said. Ethan grabbed his bag. How much time? Minutes. Maybe less. Then we run. She shook her head. No time. There's only one way now. He looked at her. She pulled the vial from his hand and held it up. Drink it, she said. Ethan hesitated. What will it do to me? You'll heal faster, see better, move sharper. But, she lowered her voice, it will hurt. It may change your senses. Only for a while. And afterward, you'll always feel a little like me. He looked at her, truly looked, not at the cloak, not at the fangs, at the person who had been trapped, hunted, misunderstood, and who had trusted him with her blood. He took the vial, uncorked it, and drank. Pain came first, sharp, like cold knives, sliding under his skin. He dropped to his knees. His heart raced, his veins burned, his eyes blurred, then suddenly focused. Too much. He could hear everything, wind scraping stone, the distant hum of a ship, the heartbeat of a bird flying overhead. Then, it passed, and when he looked up, Villari was staring at him. He could see her clearly, even in the shadows. Your eyes, she whispered. They see like yours now. He stood, shaky but stronger. His hands were steady. She nodded. Then let's finish this. The enemy arrived fast. Bounty hunters, not soldiers. 3 of them. Gray armor, high-tech scanners. One carried a heat cannon, another had a tranquilizer blade. Targets confirmed, the leader said. The vampire and the human traitor. Villari stepped forward, her voice steady. I'm not running. Ethan stood beside her. Me neither. The fight began like thunder. The hunters fired first, but Villari was already gone, moving like a shadow. She struck the first one low, sweeping his legs, then vanished again before the second could react. Ethan dodged right, firing the pulse tool at the nearest attacker. It hit direct to the chest, but barely slowed him. Armor's tough, Ethan shouted, then aim where it's soft. Valari answered, appearing behind the second hunter and jamming a broken spear into the gaps under his shoulder plate. Ethan could feel the blood inside him react. His steps were faster, more balanced. He ducked, rolled, and struck the third hunter's helmet with a steel bar. The helmet cracked. The man growled and swung a blade toward Ethan's chest. But Valari was there first. She caught the blade in her bare hand. Her skin split. Her blood dripped. But she didn't let go. "I warned you," she hissed. "I'm not your prisoner." She yanked the blade away, then drove it into the enemy's side. He fell. Hard. The battle lasted just 5 minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. When it ended, the hunters were down, alive but broken. Their weapons were scattered. Smoke drifted. Through the ruined forest clearing, Valari dropped to one knee, breathing hard. She was shaking. Ethan rushed to her side. "You're hurt," he said. "I'll heal," she whispered. "But your body..." "I'm fine," he said. "Just different." She looked at him. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "for making you drink it." He shook his head. "You didn't make me. You trusted me." She blinked. Then her voice softened. "And you trusted me." They sat together in the middle of the ruin, wounded, changed, alive. Then Ethan said, "Does this mean I'm like you now?" She touched his cheek. Her fingers were cold but gentle. "No," she whispered. "You're still you. Just stronger." He looked up at the stars above. "And now?" he asked. "Now we find a place." She said, "Where no one hunts us again." He smiled. "Together?" She nodded. "Always." The hovercraft floated gently above the clouds. Below, the forest was fading into golden mist. Above, the stars were gone, replaced by a quiet blue sky, slowly brightening. Dawn was coming. Valari sat by the window, her cloak wrapped tight around her shoulders. Her red eyes, usually sharp and alert, were soft now. Still, thoughtful. She had never watched a sunrise before, not without fear, not without pain, and never like this. Free, safe, alive. Beside her, Ethan adjusted the controls. His movements were calm, careful. Since the battle, he had changed. His eyes were brighter in the dark. His steps were quicker. But he was still Ethan, still the man who had sat outside her cage, still the one who hadn't run. They were heading to a quiet moon called Oriental, known only to traders and old wanderers. A place where night and day stayed balanced, never too bright, never too dark. It wasn't on any military maps, that's why they chose it. As they neared the landing zone, Ethan turned to her. "We're almost there," he said. Valari nodded. "And no one followed?" He shook his head. "I scrambled the signal. And your shadow trail vanished 2 systems ago." She gave a faint smile. "You're getting better at this." "I had a good teacher." She looked at him, and for a moment, the silence between them said more than words ever could. The hovercraft touched down in a wide valley surrounded by trees with silver-blue leaves. Small animals peeked from the brush. A calm river ran nearby, its surface glowing under the twin moons of the planet. They stepped out together. Ethan carried the supplies. Valari stood still, breathing in the air. It smelled like peace. By evening, they had built a small shelter, half stone, half cloth, just enough to rest. As night fell, they sat beside a fire. Ethan handed her a cup of warm root tea. She sipped it slowly. "I still don't understand why you stayed," she said softly. He smiled. "Because you never asked me to." She looked into the flames. "I used to dream of being rescued," she whispered. "But I never thought I'd be seen. You didn't just open the door. You waited until I was ready to walk through it. And you didn't just run," he said. "You fought for both of us." They sat quietly after that. The stars returned above them. But the fear was gone. Only the fire and the future remained. Just before sunrise, Velari stepped outside the shelter alone. She stood barefoot in the grass. The air was cool. The sky was turning pink at the edges, and the sun was rising. She closed her eyes, waiting for the pain, but it didn't come. The light touched her skin gently, warm, soft. No burning, no fear, just light. Her cloak fell to the ground. Ethan stepped out behind her, watching in silence. She stood there like a statue, arms open, face lifted, and then she smiled, not a small smile, a real one. One full of peace, strength, and something else. Belonging. He stepped beside her. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "I thought I would never see a sunrise without fear. But now you have." She looked at him, eyes shining. "I'm not a weapon. I know. I'm not a curse. Never were. I'm not a monster." Ethan reached for her hand. "You're Velari. And you're home." She took his hand in both of hers, held it tightly, then said, "If I ever have a child, I want them to see the sunrise too. Not from behind glass, but like this." Ethan smiled. "Then we'll give them that." They stood together as the golden light spread over the valley, touching every tree, every leaf, every shadow. Velari had been born in darkness. She had survived chains, silence, and fear, but now she was standing in the light, and for the first time, it welcomed her.